of Cave Radio Broadcasting.
Yo. Yo.
Yo, yo, yo.
Yo. What? Hey, everybody. It's Valentine's Day in the D. And you are about to watch some crazy conspiracy stuff. It's the 401 show on Cave Radio Broadcasting, CRBradio.com. Woo!
Wow.
Yeah. Ready, guys?
You're You're
Ready,
a pro.
guys?
What are we going to do?
Sure.
I am ready to get down this rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
So please, please, please.
We've already
take me
gone
there.
down a few levels already.
Oh,
Have
yeah.
you guys learned anything yet? And I'm
I,
asking this to Meegs, too.
I have. It's like I'm
Okay.
ultra aware. I can see what's going on all the time. You
What's
know,
weird
like,
is
as
I
you
keep
watch
seeing
stuff.
signs. Just bizarre signs.
Really?
Kind
like
of.
11s and 3s and
just-
11s.
Yeah, just weird random stuff that's popping up. And I'm like, oh, okay. I see.
You guys are all, just by being on this show, are on the spiritual world's radar screen.
Yes.
You are attracting interest, whether you realize it or not. Would you agree with that, Meegs?
Oh, yes. Oh, wait, and you can hear me okay, right?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sure can.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, just, we have our faces out to the world. Well, not me currently, but, yeah.
By the way,
it would
this
be
is
wise
not
to,
Meegs' face on screen.
you
right
know, seek some kind of spiritual protection. Well, hopefully the right kind of spiritual protection.
now. You know what's funny?
There's some people doing voodoo with, if they have images of your face and stuff, that stuff is real.
Oh, we
It
had a
is.
white witch give us a blessing because there was a black witch trying to hurt us.
Well, look, they're both. Just understand, they're both.
Did you think that's racist?
They're both drawn on the same dark forces that have to fight against each other. I mean, literally, Satan's got everyone at war with each other. But this sort of ties in to I wanted to start with a passage in the Bible. It's Ephesians, which is Eric's favorite book.
Awesome.
Ephesians 6:12. Meegs, do you know it offhand?
Oh gosh. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, is that the one? But against powers and principalities of darkness and spiritual wickedness in high places. Is that the one?
Yeah. The let's see. The King James version reads something like, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Now, before I was a believer in the Bible, I didn't know what all these principalities and all these powers were. What's that? Is she talking to me? Oh, okay. So I was surprised to find out these are actually ranks of demons, each with different levels of authority. That there's a very hierarchical system, both in Satan's human army portion, and we see that in the pyramid and the Illuminati pyramid all the time. And he has the exact same setup in the demonic world. I mean, the Bible literally mimics how it breaks down, how the spiritual world operates. You see that manifesting itself in the way that, whatever you can. We have lots of names for them. I usually use Illuminati because people tend to have a general idea of what we're talking about. Very hierarchical. And at the top of the
I saw this video called Secrets of the Demonic Hierarchy when I was first waking up. I wasn't necessarily a Christian yet at all. And I just looked at this lecture on YouTube. It's a full-on lecture with all the names and rankings of principalities and powers of the demonic world, and it will knock your socks off. It is just like, where are they getting this from if it isn't real?
What was this again? So I can watch it.
It's just a video called Secrets of the Demonic Hierarchy full lecture. It's a lecture, like a guy with a whiteboard, like mapping all of this out. It's like very technical. It's like a academic lecture.
Which I like.
There are some. There are lots of guys that are experts in this area, and there is actually a lot of modern and ancient writings that are not in the Bible that are clearly, at least in my opinion, biblical or inspired words of God, or at least from observers on the scene at the time that were removed in after Jesus Christ came here. But when he was referencing the scriptures in his day, some of the books that were included in there, and the most famous one is the book of Enoch, which I, without a doubt, believe that is actually the inspired word of God for several reasons.
Enoch was a giant, right?
Well, Enoch was several things. He was one of the first born. I think he was like the third generation from Adam. Enoch was the first person that never died a human death. He walked with God for about 365 years. And this is back when, as the Bible tells it, we lived a lot longer than we do now.
Who removed these chapters? The Catholics?
The Catholic Church, yes, which was really the Roman Empire, because they just morphed from the Roman Empire into the Vatican. And most of it happened, I want to say it was the Council of Laodicea, and it would have been about 432 AD, give or take. So there are, in those, it's not just the Book of Enoch, there are a lot of places you can go. Go look up a guy named Gary Wayne. There's another guy named Wyeth, or Vieth, V-I-E-T-H, Edward Prince. These guys are, we are talking about literally an operation involving billions of entities, literally. They're structured like a military. And, it doesn't surprise me. I don't go believing everything I just hear on a video, but there is a lot more information you can find about who's in the spiritual world, what their responsibilities are, what their strengths, weaknesses. Even, these things have personalities.
Are you saying this comes from biblical writings or a guy's theory, like Meegs is saying, a guy who runs it down on a YouTube video?
Well, a little of both. So I don't know the exact video Meegs is referencing. However, I've got a suspicion that the guy that put that together is referencing things like the Book of Enoch and many other ancient scriptures which go into incredible detail of which demons are controlling what parts of Earth, literally. And so in the United States, for instance, there was a demon named Nergal, Nergal. Now, this demon
He was a nerd.
I was just gonna say
He loved Harry Potter.
Satan. It was Satan. He works for Satan. There's a great little presentation put on by Lynn Leahz, Leahz. And if you Google her and Nergal, you may find that one of these guys that is an expert in demons and how they operate. Now, I'm passing this on without having double-checked this. And I always like to say, do your own research. At the end of the day, do not carry our mistakes forward. We are learning a lot of this as we go. And all of this is outside of what we were taught growing up.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. You know, you want to know it's so scary? When you're raised, you're told magic isn't real. Ghosts aren't real. You know, you're told that things like that aren't real. But when you study, like, biblical things and spiritual things and whatnot, it's like, it is real. So they're lying to you.
Well, maybe that's part of the confusion. The same thing, as a father, you realize you lie to your children about Santa Claus.
Yeah.
See, it seems like a lie that's not all that big of a deal.
Right.
You're trying to teach them about the Lord.
What do you mean, lie to your kids about Santa Claus?
What's Sonic?
Everybody does.
Everybody does.
What's the lie?
That he
Oh, there is
exists.
none. There's no lie. There's no lie. Yeah.
You're gonna break.
I know.
Break
Yeah.
his night
Yeah.
up
I don't
tonight.
want to mess up. I don't want to mess up.
I'm just saying, I was
someone
told my
else's
whole life that
belief.
magic
There
isn't
we go.
real.
We're here.
You know,
Yeah, we're on the table.
things don't actually happen. Seas don't part. Things don't fall from the sky. Like magical things do not happen. But that's a lot of what the Bible's based on is magical things that you're not supposed to believe in.
Well, what-
285 years.
Yes,
That's
what-
pretty freaking magical.
What is what is magic though? Now hang on. From our
Unbelievable.
perspective today,
Like
that's very understandable. But do you know we've identified the gene sequence that controls aging, and if we turn that gene off, we already reproduced this in labs where we're getting animals to live 20 generations longer than they should.
why doesn't Botox do that?
And we are messing with a lot of DNA in this world. That is for sure. But we're not here to make a claim or a case that people lived long, because 285 is nothing. I think
Yeah,
Methuselah
about
was the
900,
oldest, and he
right?
was 969.
But there was a point in time when the age that everyone lived to was an average of 48. You know, back in the plagues and stuff.
Well, that's
About 48 was
different
like
eras,
his.
you know.
You know.
So yeah, I totally see what you're saying, because KJ, when we grow up, we're really taught to focus on what we can see.
Yes.
So now this is sort of weird, and this is one of the.
It's not weird to me.
Well, now,
I felt the same
It's
way.
funny. It's weird to me because
Right.
until I was 42, did not believe in this nether world. I thought this
Right.
book was a book of myths. And one of just the 1,000 little miniature predictions that are in there is where God wrote something along the lines, and Meegs, maybe you can tell me what the passage is, but it was along the lines of, for the things that you see in this world are made up of things that you cannot see. Very cryptic to anyone, really, up through about 1900. What does that
Yeah.
even mean? And then we start to get into microscopy and being able to see into the atomic, and then the subatomic, and then the quark. And then we get all the way to the smallest particle you can get to. It's called a Planck particle. That right there was a surprise to physicists, because theoretically we should be able to keep dividing matter forever, theoretically. But there's actually a limit. And then on the other side, we've now discovered, if you believe what NASA tells us, which I don't
Dark
all the
matter.
time, well, we've discovered that the universe is expanding, hence it has an edge, hence there's a limit to that. So now you've got these two limits of the large and the small. So the large is what Einstein got famous for. That's the theory of relativity. That is how big bodies operate in space. And then you've got what Stephen Hawking really got famous for, which is quantum physics, which is the other end of physics. Relativity and quantum physics are both the study of physics, one of the very large, one of the very small. And so the fact that scientists that there was a limit to how much matter, how far we could break it in half, that was astounding right there. Some of it, and a lot of them actually got saved when that happened, because they're like, wait a minute, in a way we're in a digitized world. This is like we're living in a created, manufactured.
Is this where you start hearing more conversation about dimensions, or what you see Elon Musk is now talking about too, that there can actually see it in dimensional levels?
Well, we've identified, I think it's 10 dimensions. And most of this has been done on the quantum side, the small side. So,
Do people exist at the same time in these dimensions?
no. Well, yes.
So
Not
there's another Kelly Jean.
all right. Now we get the
Yeah, it's a whole.
I'm gonna
different
meet
great
her.
questions, and it just
would do
unlocks philosophical just conundrums that will just spin your mind out of control. But here's what I was going to get at with the tie-in with the Bible. So,
Wait. I have the verse if you want to.
Yeah, look. Why don't you read it out loud?
It's 2 Corinthians 4:18. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
All right. So
Truth.
Thank you. So that didn't make a lot of sense until 1950, when we started to really have the technology to get in and see the very small.
You mean the building blocks of matter? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah.
Scientists figuring out something that was already here.
Sure. By definition, a Planck particle is a building. You can get no smaller. I mean, this is now, we are beneath string theory. String theory is that these little things, vibrate, and the way they vibrate dictates what they ultimately become. Because this table surface here, this really isn't solid. This actually is a magnetic field.
I get blown away in that conversation.
So this is all made up of matter. But here's the two things I've found fascinating about this, and then we'll get into some images. Which is, one, this was a scientific prediction put in the Bible, which is pretty freaking amazing, if you ask me. That I think somewhere even in Corinthians, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in there that a lot of this information isn't going to be coming out until the latter days, and then knowledge is going to explode of the Bible. And here's the internet,
Right.
No, God didn't write the internet will be launched by Al Gore in 1990. It's not like that.
Right.
And remember,
but the fact
we're
that you have
using
this explosion in education and, going out to research what it is that you're interested in. You have it at your fingertips now.
If you're a Sadducee and you're writing a Bible in the year 200 BC, and you are describing a vision that was given to Daniel, for instance, or Ezekiel, even better, where they're talking about, in my opinion, there is no doubt that they are talking about guided missiles. These missiles that, A, cannot miss their target, they create fire, and they kill many in one fell. So as the writers of, in 200 BC, they're using the best words they can to describe an arrow and
Yeah.
But if you read it with the picture of like a missile launcher on a mobile launch device, the words, even in the Greek original, they line up perfectly. So whenever I find like science embedded inside of the Bible, it fascinates me. So this guy named Nachmanides, this is about 1000 AD. And I don't know how he did this, but he posited that there are 10 dimensions by reading just the book of Genesis. And there's a lot of hidden information in Genesis, like pi, 3.1412, that is hidden in Genesis in many places. So, where were we going with this? Ezekiel, missiles, Genesis. Oh, when I hear science.
Prediction.
This is the second thing that these little Planck particles do that scientists just cannot explain it. When you look there, when you get down to the smallest level particle, it doesn't even exist unless you observe it, meaning it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Scientists can't. This absolutely baffles them.
Like if a tree falls in the woods?
On a little bit deeper than that, but yes.
Kinda.
And a lot of quantum physicists literally have come to God because they understand at the smallest level our technology allows us, something is in control of these atoms, and we have no idea what it is. And if you can believe that God could be connected to every atom in the world, not a big deal. We have computers today that can connect with 7 billion humans simultaneously, and he could probably handle a few degrees of... But if you could understand that, you can understand how God is in control of everything, ultimately, at the end of the day. So,
yeah, that one's pretty deep to think of that, because I know they are finding that technology. We know how fast that they're, like we were talking last week about the genome and how they can go through DNA and all the things that they're finding, and all that discovery is coming quickly.
Too fast. And by the time we're finding out about it, dark projects have already been refining the technology for 30-some years. So we are much further ahead. Look, we were cloning a sheep 30 years ago.
And they showed us the sheep.
Yeah.
Once you kind of wake up, you're like, why was it a sheep?
If you think we just stopped at sheep,
Good point, Tony.
you are crazy. And I'm sorry. You're crazy if you think we just believe me, there are Satan's got armies of creatures being groomed. Satan?
See,
Being
that's a
groomed
whole
right under
episode.
military bases, and this is another thing the Bible predicted.
Chimeras.
What is coming up on the earth will basically scare the shit out of everyone so badly
You're hard to fail.
that a
Yeah.
lot of people will have heart attacks.
You want to know what's
Steve
freaking me out
Carell.
right now? That picture we have up on the screen has an evil
You
face
see
in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. That's what I
So-
noticed. At it.
Accident or on purpose? What are your votes? This photograph was taken during 9/11.
Could it have been photoshopped?
No, this was on CNN. This was
Oh,
on
wow.
original broadcast. This is not a faked photo. This was a live photograph, and I know that for a fact.
Satan.
Looks
like
mean
Accidental smoke or
you could pick the frame where you wanted it, I would guess. If you saw the image, right, and Kelly and I didn't see it and it's been up there for a few minutes. I just happened to look up and then I noticed it, and so did she. But
there were articles about this the day after 9/11 going, is this Satan's face?
It's a sign.
Is it a sign of evil? And for
Oh,
me,
yeah.
I actually found signs of both sides of this spiritual war until I started looking into 9/11. So until I started looking into 9/11,
yeah, it never really jumped out.
I thought stuff like that was just.
Well, you probably just briefed through the news like anyone else,
Well, I never. If something like this ever happened, I always thought it's just a random coincidence. But what we're going to be getting into today, predictive programming, actually flies in the face of something that I had believed my whole life that, well, if someone writes a book in 1894 about the Titanic sinking, it's just a lucky break. When the Family Guy predicts that Bruce Jenner is going to
Robin Williams.
turn into a woman, I think it's a lucky break. That's how I was programmed.
I think they predicted Robin Williams up to the hanging.
They
himself.
predicted a lot of them. It's
weird.
funny. They don't.
How can it be that? How could that be?
Well,
But all these things are just coincidences.
I have a
for this
friend,
many.
Dartmouth-educated guy, and I proposed that to him. And this is where you get into the more education you have, the harder it is, I think, to wake up. Because he dismissed this with a very quick, they probably make 10,000 predictions and they get a couple right. So then I start going into math in my head. I'm like, okay, Family Guy, there's at least 52 episodes, blah, blah, blah. How many predictions do they make? No. They've made like maybe 100 predictions that are just weird, crazy. Like Bruce Jenner's going to be a girl. And they get that right. Or
Kevin
the president.
Spacey.
We're going to get to some of these.
Yeah.
Okay. I, along with this video, had heard a presentation given by a firefighter who says that the creation of this smoke pattern is impossible. that could not have been part of the smoke of the Twin Towers.
Well, it does. I mean, if I'm looking at this picture right now, it's the smoke is a completely different color than all the other smoke around it. Even the smoke to the right and the left is like a clear, almost like a reddish color.
Yeah.
Everything else is completely black, and then you got that, which is
Like
it's almost like a gray.
So physically, they wouldn't have been able to do it, but magically, they would have.
Well, magic. What is magic? What does Arthur C. Clarke say
I
about
feel
what
like
magic
is anything that seems unreal that you wouldn't think would actually be able to happen.
Yeah, but I don't know. Say when you go to see a magic show, I understand those are illusions.
Yeah.
Even though I fall for them, every
Right.
once in a while you'll catch something and you say, "Oh, okay, now I know it's fake." So everything he's doing is fake. I just don't understand the trick.
Hey, Meegs, find what Arthur C. Clarke's quote on magic is.
I don't think it was a trick. I think it was just
any
magic isn't-
sufficiently
Hang on a sec.
advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
magic would be performed, rehearsed. What would we call it then? If
Magic
it was
is just basically, it's what we don't know. It's the hidden. It's the occult. That's just really what it is.
So it'd be more
That's a good
spiritual
way to
than
put
magic,
it,
though.
David. It's the science that we weren't allowed to know about. Right.
Sure. All right, let's start getting through some of these. These are just some images of interest, and there's some images that are going to spur some conversations. Little
Okay.
things I picked up.
Okay.
Along the way.
Because if you're not looking closely, you miss a lot of the details.
Right.
And where does the devil live, Meegs?
And the details.
He does. So we've got here 4 images of Osama bin Laden. One of them, the one on the right, is clearly not him. These are all videos that were images that came from either these were all mainstream media images. And I find it odd that a guy that is this radical Islamic leader buys hair dye and dyes his beard's brown.
Yeah.
But didn't he live in this huge mansion and
Well,
tigers
He's
and
a,
stuff?
He was a rich kid.
He was like
You
a
know,
gangster.
Well, no, he was a rich kid that we helped.
Yeah, exactly.
When Russia invaded Afghanistan, he was a Saudi Arabian kid,
Mujahideen
rich kid
is
who
what
was
we.
going to school in America.
Yeah, Tim Osman. That's
You
what
know?
Jimmy brought up. That
Going to school in America, and then when the Russians invaded, he figured, I'm going to go and help my brethren or whatever. So he went over there. The CIA trained him.
Yeah, he became an asset.
Yeah,
We gave him money
The CIA,
and arms.
the CIA trained him. We provided all the weapons that the Afghanis used to
Stinger missiles.
knock Russia back to where they came from. You know what I mean? And and it's just so the and I don't even know where my head was going with this, but it's just funny that people are like, oh well, he was a rich kid that wanted to help, and then we. I don't
Pushed
know
him
why
along.
they
Targeted.
changed though. What the U.S. helped them,
Right.
so why do they hate us so much now?
Because
That's what I don't understand. That's what I
probably
don't understand.
because we turned our backs on him.
Yeah, we
or
turned our
there's
backs
some-
on him in
yeah.
Afghanistan.
It's because the devil, Bobby Boucher.
It is. That
So
devil.
anyway, that was my
devil.
But everyone, complain. Oh, he was made by the United States of America. Osama bin Laden.
Absolutely.
Why?
I think, look, he might have been born into a demonic family before, but the man, it's funny. I mean, the faces of some of the biggest events in U.S. history are all, if you look at their profiles deeply enough, they're all former intelligence agents that used to work for the very, it's just crazy.
I heard on Freeman Fly, who's a famous truther dude, that the Bushes and the Bin Ladens were actually quite close, and George H.W. Bush Senior was known as like Bush Bin Laden or something. They would go over to each other's houses for dinners and
Yeah,
stuff.
they walk holding hands.
Well,
George and Bandar.
And you
Prince Bandar,
had
who
brought up
was-
Carlisle Group
Yeah.
a few shows ago, and that you were correct because it was a Carlisle Group meeting when the Bin Ladens were meeting with the Bushes before 9/11. And then, of course, the Bushes were meeting with the Hinckleys before Reagan.
Before Reagan.
And what's the commodity that brings them all together? Oil.
Yeah.
Hinckleys were an oil family. All right, so we all have seen the 2 beams from Ground Zero. But how many buildings fell at Ground Zero?
3.
All of them.
Why only 2 beams?
Didn't they destroy others as well, or had
All of them
reconstruction on
fell.
others? But still, that day,
Look,
3
the-
fell.
Most of the buildings were just unusable and were just brought down. But only 3 buildings collapsed in on themselves, demolition style. And the third one, I think it went off later than it was supposed to. The news was telling us it happened before it happened.
Correct.
And that's a smoking gun that's out there.
That was BBC too, right? Or
So-
one of them is BBC.
Matt, there
I
was
believe.
a lot of agencies that spoke about
How
it.
could they? That's
It was
so
clear
funny,
that,
man.
and it was across different news wires, AP.
Yeah.
And this story went out to the world before it could have gone
So
out
the
to the
reason
world.
for the 2 is because it was the Twin Towers, right? I mean, even though 3
That's how we
buildings
think
came
of it.
down,
Yeah,
but
because you ask, well, it's about 50-50 now, but you ask the average American how many buildings fell on 9/11.
They don't know.
They say, well, no, they say 2. They're certain there were 2. And then when you say, no, well, there was a third, they're like, no. Then they come back and go, oh, my God, I didn't know that built. So this is, predictive programming is very subliminal. And we're seeing that here. We're reminded that, oh, it was only 2 buildings there.
Yeah.
Yet there were more.
I see.
Operation Northwoods. You guys familiar with that?
I am familiar with it. I don't know the details.
Meegs, I'm sure you're familiar with it, right, Meegs?
False flag attack plans for Cuba.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I do remember this, is both Bush and Condoleezza Rice in the days after 9/11 saying, we could never have imagined, people taking airplanes and flying them into buildings. Right? You guys remember that? Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So most of the images we're going to be looking at are going to show the fact that how weird that, at the time she was either, Secretary of State or National Secretary of Defense.
I don't remember her position.
But
Darn it.
she did not, something did not occur to her or her entire staff or the president, which
That this could
has
happen.
been occurring to artists for years and had occurred to pretty much every other part of the military as they were doing drills mimicking 9/11 on the morning of 9/11. But she couldn't have imagined it. So these are a couple of highlights from this Operation Northwoods, which I want to say was, what'd you say, Meegs, 1962?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me see here. 1962, yeah.
So remember, Cuba is one of those nations that doesn't have
no central bank.
doesn't have a central bank.
Correct. Yeah.
So they've been on our radar screen for a while. Helps you understand how the Bay of Pigs happens, how Operation Northwoods even gets written up, which is a plan by the Defense Department to mimic the hijacking of a plane, the dying of American people at the hands of foreigners that hate America, and to use that as a justification to invade Cuba.
Yep.
And that plan there were some details of that plan they did in 9/11, but they did not update it much to pull off 9/11. So
and it's
these
like the end justifies the means type of thing, and that's how they get people to go along with it in the military. In this plan they were proposing that no, they didn't think anybody would get killed. Any of our own soldiers would get killed in this false flag attack, but if they did, then it's okay. They were still going to go through with it because the end justifies the means.
Wow.
Horrific.
Yeah, I don't. That's the thing. Over the years, as you see all these different scenarios, it totally makes you like, how can I be the weirdo?
Right.
How can I be the weirdo when all this stuff is out there for you to see?
And it's documented. You could look on even Wikipedia and find it out. They're not trying to hide it. Anyway.
we've all seen the Bart Simpson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have seen.
New York 9/11. When there's one accidental 9/11 in an image, that doesn't always mean very much to me. It's got to be backed by something else that ties it in. And in this image, on the dollars that Bart is holding, it's actually the Masonic temple entrance.
Oh, wow.
And that's ultimately
The
the
two
guys
columns.
It's wild.
that were behind
Columns
this
are
thing.
huge in Freemasonry. They're named too. It's like Joachim, and I don't know what the other name is, but it's very significant symbolism in Freemasonry.
Okay. This is the new layout of Ground Zero, the World Trade Center.
Osiris Belt.
Does that look familiar to anybody?
Osiris Belt to me.
It looks like the pyramids.
It does, doesn't it?
That's so weird.
There is a lot of spiritual junk involved with that.
Effery.
And I don't want to get too far because that's its own topic.
That is the stars up there that you're
But
looking
Meegs,
at, right?
could you do me a favor?
Mm-hmm.
Google something like I ceremony ground zero. I is an EYE. Because 1 year after 9/11, they started doing these rituals.
What's that top picture?
That is
Oh,
3 stars. That's
gosh.
Orion's belt.
Oh, that's what
Yeah.
Thomas said. Okay.
That is
Osiris.
bizarre.
Yeah.
And did you also, Meegs, I don't know if we're going to get to the images on this, but did you also know that there was one-eyed symbolism all over the basement of the World Trade Center, and there was even a ritual chamber If you look, you can probably find some of those images while we're cutting through some of these.
Well, one day we'll have to talk about the new Denver airport.
Yeah.
Oh, we will. That's its
That's
its own show.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. A
symbolism.
ritual chamber in the Twin Towers? Are you kidding?
Yes. And look, they're more common than you think in corporate America.
You mean like a chapel room is what they would call it, or is it's truly called a ritual room?
I don't know what they call it.
Yeah.
That's the name
Called
I
a
gave
human
it.
Sacrifice.
It looks
room,
like
though.
a sacrificial ritual.
That's
There was
amazing.
something a little, and the one,
Gosh.
there were, if you pull those up, and anyone listening along pulls up World Trade Center, All-Seeing Eye of Horus. Remember, the same single eye that was at the top of the pyramid, that's the same one that KJ got on her wrist. That's also known as the Eye of Horus.
Horus.
That it's the embodiment of Osiris or something like that. So keep in mind, this power base, which has been hidden but identified through this temple-like single-eye structure going back to Babylon, we now see it in Egypt.
Yeah.
It's then put into the actual World Trade Center, and the very people who praise the god behind that rebuild the World Trade Center after the same way the pyramids were mapped that also had the exact same eye.
Wow.
Just a little hint that we're like detectives, and we're following this evil cabal throughout history. And at the head of them is the Rothschild family, which this is a meme which actually proved to be true, that a week before September 11th, Zim Shipping Company, they do business. Pretty much everyone we do business with is ultimately owned by the Rothschild. I mean, all household names.
Corporation.
Gosh, I'm just looking at the eyes, the artwork and the mosaic tiling. There's just random eye
Now,
symbolism all over the basement of the World Trade, the Twin Towers. This is unbelievable.
Wow.
And then there's
I
the
never knew that.
Oculus. The Oculus is a commemorative monument that was built after the Twin Towers collapsed. But it's a giant eye. It says it opens.
and not only that, I mean, this has to be sacred ground of some sort because they continue to have rituals there. Where even look up Ground Zero and All-Seeing Eye ritual, where these people, it's kind of like what happened at CERN when that sacrificial ritual got captured on camera.
Yep, the quick video.
And yes, I understand the officials at CERN said it was a joke. Okay, just understand this. Every time these guys get caught doing this, they're going to say it's a joke. So that means nothing to me. I think the question I have back for you is this. CERN is the equivalent of a military installation. You don't just walk in and hang out and eat some popcorn and have a picnic, all right? You need IDs, you need clearances, you need guards to let gates up.
Secure building.
Okay.
Secure campus.
Someone that's on that campus is either one hell of an actor or he videotaped what to me looks like a
ritual.
spiritual killing. And they had all around the goddess Shiva, which is that statue. She's the goddess of destruction, by the way. And what's crazy is the Bible had said that essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, one of the pits of hell is going to open up in the latter days, and it's going to open up over the city called Apollyon. Okay? Now, CERN, where's CERN built? It's built on the ruins of a city whose name, Greek name Abaddon, is Apollyon. Interesting, okay? There's something very spiritual is going on here. So this guy that's on this CERN campus is videotaping. He's like, what the hell's going on? He's like, because everyone has a camera now. They're easier to spot. He freaks out because I think he just saw a woman I think we're watching a woman get killed. Now, they, yes, play it off as a joke. So let's just say it is a joke. What kind of humor is it at a military installation, no less, that you can get a bunch of scientists and researchers to dress up in black robes and fake stab someone? I mean, where's the humor in it?
Haven't there been mysterious deaths as well with some of the CERN scientists? Like young guys dying in a pool, or a hot tub that's
Anyone who
essentially
knows
shitting.
too much.
Yeah, that's what
You
it
guys,
seems like to
it
me.
They
always.
tried to stab Corey Feldman.
Man,
Yeah. Hey, Meegs, do me a favor.
Yeah.
there's something I've been nervous
Look
about.
up. I want to say this was in the early '90s. Look up cable car with 20 astronomers that. So this is another way that I think they keep things quiet, because in the early 1990s, a bunch of astronomers came together, and I totally understand why. Now, you got to understand something. In any field, when you discover something, you want to get the credit for it. In fact, there's a lot of little warring that goes on of
Yeah.
who's getting the
Patent.
article in the peer-reviewed journal, So it's very odd that an incredible discovery, instead of it being announced by the discoverer went around and essentially recruited 20 other scientists, showed it to them. They all agreed that they were going to together make an announcement that was going to change the world. On the way to their, and I want to say this is France, Meegs.
Mm-hmm.
On the way
Yeah.
to this press conference, they're all in a cable car. And guess what happened? The cable car, it broke,
rail.
fell, collapsed, everyone. And I'm sure they had guys with guns to come by afterward to make sure everyone's dead.
Wow.
Kept
Is it
quiet.
after falling 250 feet, the cable car smashed like an egg, scattering 20 bodies over the
Jeez.
snow-dusted meadows.
Did you
Ugh.
know the story, or are you reading something?
No, I did not ever hear about this. Oh, this is horrifying.
Ugh.
So look, you got to
That's weird,
understand,
man.
there is a lockdown on information, but right now we have access. These things we did not have access to is, I can go read about that event in a French newspaper that was in 1991. I can go see it with my own eyes on the French paper's website. You cannot fake that. And for anyone that wants to wake up,
It's out there. Yeah, the research is there.
It's a little fishy. Even in the movie Capricorn 1, about the plot line was about how they faked the moon landing. They show a scene, with a NASA employee is starting to wake up, and there's a scene where he starts getting tailed by cars, and these cars start running him off of the freeway, like into the ocean, basically. And then they even mentioned gang stalking in that movie, where they're playing psychological mind games with this, this NASA guy who's waking up to the fact that everything is a hoax, and he's starting to talk about it. So they're doing psychological warfare on him and trying to run him off the road and stuff. And it's like, well, I mean, this stuff really does happen.
oh,
It
and by
really
the
does.
time it's in a movie, I'm talking a major studio film, not necessarily an independent film. Independent filmmakers might still think that Hollywood is somewhat the land of equal opportunity. Not even close. Those studios are propaganda temples, and they really, NASA's nothing more really than a movie studio, if you ask me. And
Amen.
and it's one of the ways they veil the truth is they put it in science fiction. So when people like us reference it happening in real life, you get your Dartmouth guy dismissing it off the
Yeah.
bat, going, "Oh, dude, you saw that in a movie,"
Right.
and he
It's the
doesn't
easy
know that
out.
he is being played with.
Well, I think that's everyone's first perception, right? Especially if someone brings you something that they feel that you should look at. It's the first thing you're gonna. What's this guy talking about? Especially if you're not interested in that subject. So it's very difficult to go out and talk to running up to easy and you're not gonna believe what happened, and I've done that, So now having the show to actually lay it out and explain to people each week where these references are coming from, that's the greatest gift of this show.
Well, we're painting dots.
Yeah.
Here's another one from 9/11. What's the name of the camera company here? This was caught on ABC, and it was caught on ABC by accident. You guys ever heard of a company called Westcam?
No.
Another way to pronounce that, by the way, Meegs, why don't you look up what Westcam does? They're a defense contractor. And they are in the business of creating holographic imagery to
Really?
fool armies that they're facing forces that aren't really there. Now, another way to read this company's name is We Scam. This was not supposed to show up on ABC. It accidentally did show up on ABC. And there is no doubt that hologram technology was being used on 9/11. I'm sure some of you have seen the
I've heard this
CNN
theory,
video.
yeah.
You can see them yourself. Where the cone of the airplane actually accidentally they have it exiting the far side of the building.
I seen that, and I seen it definitely in all the aftermath
So
footage. Days after.
Here's how we can start to link these things together. Because I've seen that footage taped live off of DVRs on the morning of actual 9/11 that people can now put up on the internet. And I've, with my own eyes, have seen several news stories that show the cone of the second plane to hit the second tower going all the way through. And if you know anything about flying, the front cone of an airplane, it's like foil aluminum. It's hollow. It is not going to cut through bars of steel and make it intact all the way through.
Exactly.
Birds make holes in it. If a bird hits the cone of the plane, the front part of the plane, it makes a hole in it.
So you've got this physics aberration going on CNN. And so in my 9/11 research, I go looking, well, how the heck does this happen? And how odd that a national defense contractor that specializes in holographic deceptive imagery is also accidentally caught. And Meegs, maybe you can find out the story of the helicopter pilots. Lots of people died in the days after 9/11, a la cable car. But there was a very special story with some helicopter pilots that saw something they were not supposed to see, and they never made it to trial, or I should say to.
That's the other part, is that so many people that have had a story to tell never, got to tell their story, or they were just called out as wackos right off the rip.
Right.
Discounting them. Even I think even Stephanopoulos is the guy's name.
George Stephanopoulos?
He
George
says he was on his way in and a bomb went off in the basement. And
the
later on
basement.
says that didn't happen.
or something, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and he's down with the system. See, when you go from being
he's a
White House chief of staff to
the
being a news correspondent, that's a sign. All right, Condoleezza Rice and George Bush could not have imagined an airplane flying into the Twin Towers, but Cracked Magazine did in 1975. And you'll notice, by the way,
I was born in 75.
there are 2 plane crashes referenced in this image.
Oh, wow.
You see, the image happening is of a plane that is just striking now, but something's already struck.
Wow, that's creepy. It's really weird, isn't it?
This is from 1978 Challenge of the Super Friends. This is in a cartoon. Something that looks like the Twin Towers tips over, and the all-seeing eye of Horus is the force that did it. Which Meegs just verified was already at ground zero.
So I don't understand if this is a secret society and they don't want anybody to know this and this and this. Like, why would there be all these signs?
To tell each
throughout the
other?
years?
Maybe
I wonder that myself a lot, because strategically it does not help them. So I don't know if this is some type of divine law that they have to broadcast their intentions.
Yeah.
It could also be an excellent recruiting tool, because you're bringing a guy up in through a lodge, for instance, and you're wanting to show him that, look, we've got some serious power here. You want him to get, and you might be told to take a look at a few, here's how we communicate through film, or here's where you might see our presence whenever you see this. And when they see these things manifest, I could see where they're like, wow, that, there's real power here. Like, there is something going on here, and the future's being predicted by this thing I serve. So Escape from New York, we've all seen it.
Kurt Russell.
Real quick, I just found, this is worth mentioning, actually. Google, when I typed in helicopter pilot whistleblower killed after 9/11, absolutely nothing came up on Google. But as soon as I typed that same thing into DuckDuckGo, the search engine DuckDuckGo, this pops up. It's like mysterious witness deaths on 9/11, and the thing pops up that I was looking for. Like, that's the second search item. Paul Smith, Chopper 7 pilot, pilot of ABC's 9/11 international shot chopper who caught the second plane flying into the tower, was killed when he was run over by a cab driver. I mean, this is just nuts.
Killed by a cab driver, not a cable
Huh?
car.
But there's a whole list of eyewitnesses that were killed mysteriously in this article, which we'll link in the description
Well,
box.
Google's obviously
Was,
paid to not
For
be able
sure.
to, like, look up things like that.
Yeah,
then.
use DuckDuckGo, guys. That's a good search engine.
Well,
that
you
way.
gotta
being
you
censored.
Right.
you have to keep morphing because they will if DuckDuckGo gets popular, they will co-opt it.
Right.
So if you want to find out why Google is such a serious problem, go to TED Talks and look up a talk, and I forgot who gave it, but just look up Google search on TED Talks. So what happens is, for people like Meegs and I who are into conspiracies, in general, our Google will be favorable. We will see things that support our opinion that we think there's something weird going on in this world.
Yeah.
But if I go to my friend's computer and use his Google account and do the same search, what he will pull up is stuff that makes it sound like Meegs and I are crazy.
Yeah.
So there's almost like this one-on-one communication line going on between you and your computer, but because you are feeling the audience effect, the crowd effect, like you think you're looking at on Google, millions of people are looking at this on Google.
Right.
We want to mimic what the group is doing because that, being accepted in groups is one of humans. It's one of our biggest weaknesses and also one of our.
Well, now
But wait, you and Meegs aren't crazy? No, I'm just joking.
No, we're probably
Just
crazy,
you out
but we're not
there.
wrong about the stuff we talk
Just
about.
joking.
Yeah, but now knowing, the opportunity to pay to get your listing at the top of the list. There's a lot of people that would invest, even if it's just to push a narrative or to push that narrative out. See, to push you 2-3 pages in before you find the article that you want. People pay for that. Every one of
Right.
these news organizations
yeah.
pushes their
Sponsored, you'll see right
sponsored,
at the top.
yeah,
Yep.
to push their article to
There's
the
a
top.
lot more going on with Google search than even
It sucks.
SEO and SEM
Who
specialists.
is this old
know.
lady drinking the purple Kool-Aid?
This is Philippine de
Drinking
Rothschild.
Her name's Philippine.
Fancy name.
And just take take a look at her jewelry. What do you guys see?
Take a look at her face.
It's a ram.
Wow.
That's a Baphomet head.
Wow.
Okay. So maybe she got it from a
Dang.
friend,
Sure.
big
Didn't
ass
know
and it
what
might
was.
just be
Hot
might just-
topic.
She needs a hair appointment.
That's wild.
We'll
She
see.
needs a new attitude adjustment. Drink that wine, girl.
every money that's in circulation's owed to her family. I don't think she cares what she
Whoa,
looks
she's
like.
wearing that same
Wait,
necklace.
a different day. Got the same brooch. This one
Same
this brooch
necklace.
means something to me.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Just funny. A something that glorifies Satan being worn by a mature. Whoa.
That's wild.
Here's another one where she's got another picture of the devil hanging from her
Wow.
neck.
She's full of voodoo.
Oh, we just missed one. Well, she would be from the synagogue of Satan, and Jesus told us, go look up Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9. And yes, to the outward world, she's Jewish. But what did Jesus tell us that the synagogue of Satan was? They were fake. They would pretend to be Jews, but they would secretly be Lucifer worshipers. They'd be Satanists. They'd be the synagogue of Satan. They would use their Jewishness to create a lot of anti-Semitism. So a lot of people think the
Can't
Jews
say
this is
anything.
a Jewish conspiracy. Israel
Yeah.
did 9/11. There's partial truth in that. But what I'm trying to show you is that, yes, like Charles just said, your average person is going to associate them with Jewish people because that's what they are outwardly. But what we're seeing is inwardly, they
So
actually...
mostly Jewish people are Satanists?
No.
Oh.
Juicifarian.
Not at all.
No, it's
Just
them-
clarifying
it's them-
that.
99% of Jewish people are totally...
They're manipulating the religion.
These people,
Okay.
they probably don't even have total human DNA. I mean, there's some aberrations in there that have been...
A little bit of gray in them.
I'm
Well,
conjecturing,
a lot
but...
of incest with these elitist groups, And
Or
So-
Grace.
freaking fruitcakes.
Oh, without a doubt. And
Yeah.
they're intermarrying all the time. So here's the queen and her assistant. Just interesting. She's got a belt that's got this Masonic symbol and a pentagram on the other side of it. Can you guys see that okay?
That's her assistant.
Wow.
Well, she's inches
her,
from
sure.
the queen. Whoever it is
Yeah.
got authority to be there. I mean, you don't just...
Right. You're not just strolling by.
Predictive programming.
And one more thing I wanted to throw in, just for anybody who's not, well versed in the, regular garden variety Jewish person who goes to the synagogue and with their family, versus, a Zionist, a person that's Jewish that considers themselves a Zionist. There's a huge difference. The Zionist Jew is an elite like Jewish supremacist, eugenicist kind of Jewish person. So there's a huge difference.
I'm not sure what a Zionist is because, like, my dad's side of the family, we weren't church people, but we would always go to Zion Baptist Church. Does that mean something?
Well, is Zion, is that like the old name of the new Jewish city that's coming? It's like the hope of the future. It is going to be in the actual land of Israel. And I'm
Right.
asking you.
Right.
I'm asking you,
Absolutely.
Meegs.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, and
That's
So
a new
Zion
heaven.
Baptist would be Jewish Baptists?
No, future.
but not everybody that calls
future
themselves
Yeah,
not
you-
a temple or church that calls themselves Zionist is part of this elite Zionist group. It's very kind of convoluted. But if you look at, there's a documentary that Tex Mars did on like elite Judaism and Freemasonry, and that kind of fleshes everything out. Let me think of what this documentary is called. But yeah, there is a difference. We're not being anti-Semitic.
And look, in the group we're talking about, remember, we've already covered, they are not defined by national borders. All right, it's not like the Americans versus the Russians, okay? And these guys are not even defined by what our they don't care if you're black or you're Hispanic
They're
or where
landowners.
you are
Yeah.
from. If you, meaning this group has people from all walks, without a doubt.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah.
let's get through a few more of these because our conversation, these images make them go all over the place. Do you guys see anything strange in this picture?
Just the weird puff of smoke that doesn't have anything to do with the building.
Okay, well,
Right.
has any of the towers completely collapsed yet, or are we watching the first? Are we watching the first tower collapse or the second tower?
Looks like either one of them.
I couldn't
They're
tell you.
both, they're both standing right there. Right? I don't know.
It's a collapsed tower. I couldn't tell you which one. It
Now,
is.
if the collapse of the towers began above, why is there explosions emitting from underneath?
bottom.
Which
Right.
corroborates your George Stephanopoulos.
Yeah.
Little images like this that were captured but somewhat buried. The Medusa Touch, 1978. Planes into buildings. There's a lot of...
Wait. Why was this depicted in '78? Wait, let me see. It was really it didn't run like this first.
features a 9/11 type of attack.
Yeah, it's just a picture of a.
Why it was
Of
isn't
a
important
film.
so much.
Okay.
The fact that the image exists, and this is a VHS cover, if I'm not mistaken.
Which, like,
Pretty
Condoleezza
bizarre.
Rice and all them said that
This is
there's
my.
no way
This
that
is
a
the point. We're just
plane's gonna fall.
refuting that no one.
Explaining it to Kelly Jean, who asked why this.
Gotcha.
You're showing
Yeah.
us all this predictive programming that these heads of state said was
Like
impossible.
they already knew '78
that it was possible. Well, obviously, before they would ever put up a high rise, they would have to have thought about airports being close and how do
Right.
you keep, these airliners away from the inner city, to not hit a building and not know it. Say if you're in fog, so there had to have been like I don't want to say like a no-fly zone, but you have to be at a certain altitude,
Well,
right, to never hit a building. I'm saying the pilot, if you're in fog or rain and you're in all clouds,
You can't
you'd know where
imagine
those
how
buildings
hard
are
it would
at.
be to be at 1,000 feet over a city. You would feel it. I mean, I don't know if you have experience flying, but there is no way you are going to just I mean, Well, I would say this. Fog did cause B-25, or was it a B-24? A B-25 Mitchell to hit the Empire State Building. So hold that thought for a minute. Okay. Hold that thought for a minute. You'd mentioned Red Sea parting. These are some of the images I came across of the divers that found the remnants of chariots. Bottom of the Red Sea. Now, what's funny is this story was obviously mythology. So they didn't even bother to look for it. And a guy that was looking for sunken treasure, and I want to say the 70s or 80s, ends up finding not one, dozens. Something happened at the bottom of the Red Sea, and there's only one account in history that ever explains that anything happened there.
Yeah.
Right.
The sea was parted as the Jews were leaving. And then the story goes on to say some other crazy stuff like God parted a rock and water spewed from it.
Right. Oh, it'd be so cool to find that.
But have you seen the rock that... Another creepo one. On the left is Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, no.
The birth of the Antichrist, and on the right...
Wow.
I mean, don't these people have professional wardrobe assistants and helpers?
That's creepy.
I'm not saying that this little guy in Kate Middleton's arms is the Antichrist. But
Very
Satan
well could
is
be.
Definitely...
That's so bizarre.
That's Polanski, right?
Yeah.
Rosemary's Baby?
I mean, that's a direct nod to that movie. There's no way.
That's a good way.
It's identical.
Good way to put it. Okay, right here. This is where supposedly a 767 hit the Pentagon. This was the impact point. Now, we get pictures of the Pentagon later after the walls collapsed. That's what they show us.
It doesn't look impacted.
Show me. By now, as their theory goes, 2 8-ton titanium steel engines have melted somehow. Where are they?
Down.
Where is the wreckage? Where is the cigarette ad from before 2001?
Wow.
Yes, cigarette companies.
Creepy.
Medusa Touch.
Why didn't the Pentagon burn for 2 months like the towers did?
That's a great question.
Mario Brothers.
Shanksville didn't burn for 2 months either.
Wow.
Here's another.
Shanksville's another one that's kind of a weird scattering.
2001.
Mario Brothers, 1997. 2 twin. That's obviously New York, Empire State Building. Both twin towers collapsing. This one blows me away.
Oh.
Because read, what does it say at the top?
Everyone thinks that
Osteoarthritis.
their joints are safe and strong. I can't read what's right below it, but then it
Some
says
collapses them.
osteoarthritis collapses them, and it's a plane about to hit the...
Okay. Now, we're
Wow.
looking at this as an arthritis ad, which is backed by the AMA.
Right, which was
has the
probably
same
normal back then, but now...
Now, when you look at that, now it's just, in general, I have some experience with advertising. It's just kind of strange to turn the World Trade Center into your ad for
What year was this?
osteoarthritis.
This is like it's in the 80s.
All right. So
It
let's
is.
read this as if they're making fun of the fact that they're going to take these, and let's see if any lines are out of place.
Okay.
Everyone thinks that their joints are safe and strong, like the joints of the World Trade Center are safe and
Right.
strong. Remember,
Yeah.
when 9/11 happened, they said it was those floor joints that gave way. Remember? I remember that. I'm just looking at an airplane, and underneath it just says, it basically is saying airplane collapses them. Act before it strikes you.
My God.
Really? Strikes.
Now, part of this predictive programming could it be? Let's say you have an argument between the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, right? And this is a way that they could communicate with each other as well. When we talk about symbols or the way things are written up or an ad, it may be directed to each other.
I don't know if they're communicating with each other, but this is obviously being communicated because I don't think all of these taken together.
Real quick, I shared I created a watch party, which you can do on this now, and I've been a bunch of people been coming in with comments and stuff. Alan Byrne, Cave Radio's own Motown Mules.
Hi, Alan.
Predictive programming is actually black magic. They use images and thoughts with sound effects, getting you to bring the energy in. The more people who see, feel, and hear the same thing at the same time, give it energy.
That's exactly what the Google
that's what I
example.
told-
That
Ellen,
and when I
is
said, I
the
go, that's what we
whole
talked about at the
summary of
beginning
what
of the
we're
show.
talking
Ellen's
about right
very
now.
Ellen's on
smart.
point. And
Thank you, Ellen.
Ellen,
Ellen's very sharp when
Ellen?
it comes to this stuff. Yep.
she knows. I mean, I know Ellen too.
Yes.
We're still due for lunch, by the way, Ellen. She definitely knows there is a spiritual world. Now, we might have a respectful
idea.
disagreement about what sides of it we should be tapping into and what it implies.
Right here, Magic World Cinema.
But yeah, there again. All right, Philip says so. Even in this might be Turkey or Russia. I can't remember. 1996, airplanes hitting the towers. Of all the ways to use Ronaldo, and ad again for tires. Ronaldo, number 9/11 by Pirelli.
Burn
This was
rubber.
in
Oh, yeah.
1998.
Didn't even- I'm like, why is this anything but then 9/11? Okay.
9/11. This was only on Independence Day for a flash. Whenever this was the last frame of this scene, and there are other scenes in
They
Independence
stopped
Day that have 9/11/01. So when it happens twice, to me, that's not a coincidence
Okay,
anymore.
speaking of movies and stuff, you guys gotta Google Back to the Future.
Oh, that's coming
Oh,
up.
did you see it? Like they have all these throughout Back to the Future 1, 2, 3. They have all these like premonitions
we're-
of what's
I think
gonna
we're gonna-
happen.
well, I think we're gonna
and-
get to 'em
okay,
here if we
good. Then
can.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Johnny Bravo.
I've seen this Johnny Bravo image.
That one's a pretty popular one. I ended up buying Lethal Weapon to prove this one 2 weeks ago. So here's what's crazy. We've all seen Lethal Weapon, right?
Yeah.
All right.
You-
So
the-
we've
the
got
original.
yeah,
the
the
original,
first one,
okay.
very first one. So in there, we got Murtaugh and what's Mel Gibson's
Oh darn.
Riggs. Thank you. Riggs and Murtaugh are going to question this prostitute named Dixie. All right.
Okay.
So it's not just that this sign is here. And first, so they're in a residential neighborhood. And we know a little bit about filmmaking here. And nothing appears in a frame unless you put it there.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
those are
Yep.
nothing in a frame is an accident. So a residential neighborhood that does not allow parking from 9 to 11 a.m. I've never seen, I've been in a city where
For that
they
area. Yeah.
have street cleaning times. Okay. This says Wednesday. So the double connection is right as we see this sign, 9/11, what happens to Dixie's house?
Before it blows up.
It blows up.
Whoa.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Another German Mario comic.
And it's not always just
Wow.
Here's the movie Meteor. Obviously cut right through the towers, and that had Sean Connery in it.
This is freaking ridiculous.
Okay, we're
There's-
just getting
there's a ton of
started.
them.
It's insane.
Microsoft Flight Simulator. I mean, you're going to simulate. Why do you have two buildings around an airport? Microsoft.
Yeah, this one gets me big time.
I think this one's just cute
This is
because they
Cute.
set it up for
Can you
Mohammed
zoom up? Can you zoom it in?
for Mohammed Atta's birthday.
Wow.
Oh, for the expiration of his license, right here.
Are you kidding me?
In the Matrix movie?
How
they-
could that be?
9/11/01.
They knew how
When's
long
his
they were going.
birthday?
9/10/99.
And when you go
Oh,
behind the
1968.
scenes, his application should not have had an expiration of 9/11/01. That
Man.
means they did that on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, what's the chance?
Oh, they did the same thing in the movie The Matrix for Neo's passport.
Oh yeah, we'll
It
get to
expired.
that too.
Yeah.
The other thing is that they found this right obviously on the street for the Twin Towers. Yet none, like you're saying, the engines were found over here. There's a ton of different inconsistencies. But how do you find that? There's so many people.
Let's get
perish.
through some more image. We got
Okay.
5 minutes. Let's cook
Okay.
through some.
God.
The fact that the Nazis actually put their flag over the ground zero is not far from the truth. Because ultimately, who was behind the CIA? I mean, behind 9/11? It was the CIA with Mossad and Pakistani ISI. Where did they come
CIA
from?
is Nazis.
Well, where did Mossad came from? Israel's formation, which was helped along by the OSS as it was becoming the CIA. And where did we get all the guys to make the CIA in 1945 to 47?
from
from
the
the
Nazis.
Nazis.
Yeah, paperclip.
Their ideology, their eugenics, their we're seeing them mock us because in a ways that Nazi ideology is very much a part of
our whole system.
And this is what was
That's
supposed. This is
crazy,
what was
man.
being symbolized, and this is why some guys walked off of the job of the construction of the World Trade Center in the 1970s, because somehow they'd already discovered that the buildings were going to be brought down back then.
This is from the
Ooh, I didn't know
70s
that.
here? Oh.
No, but my point is, we are up against an evil entity that has a long-range plan and is here to mimic and counterfeit everything God has done, and it does it in many ways.
Should we sage in here next week?
What's that?
Should we sage in here next week, just in case?
Sage the room.
No.
No.
Simple prayer
Meeks
clears
got
this
it.
room out. So there's a
Maybe
lot
we could,
behind.
like,
when-
Save me, Jesus.
Spray some holy water or
Yes.
anointing oil instead.
Sage and holy water just to protect our souls for getting this deep into the rabbit hole.
But not like Catholic blessed
Right.
holy
Yeah,
water.
that
We
useless.
just bless it ourselves.
So a lot of insiders talk about how these two towers were actually joined into one. And if you look at the new building, which one of its names is the Freedom Tower, it actually is two buildings that have come to meet each other, to join each other from their points. That is what the design of that building is. And it's a merging of a DNA line, because Satan's bloodline
helix.
is about to go public in the New World Order, in the one world government that was talked about in the
Yes.
Bible. And what's the other name of Freedom Tower? One
One
World
World.
Trade Center.
Yes.
Hey, real quick, Ellen Bird just said, I wish more people will know.
One World Trade Center.
So we stop participating. Everyone is part of the magic and the spells. The good people are unaware, and the black magicians work 24/7 to keep it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Now we are awakening.
Yeah.
Ellen
We
is
need to
right
come at
about
him with
that.
some positive forces, for sure.
Good job, Ellen. Thanks for participating.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
thanks,
only got
honey.
a couple minutes left. I wanted to say that we've
This is
touched
one
on
from
so
your
many
friend
crazy
Meegs.
things this time.
Yes.
I
My
had
friend
never
Tori
seen this
said
one,
this to
but
me.
The New Yorker showing the Twin Towers about to get demolished.
Oh, wow.
1993.
This
I've
one
never
was
seen this.
interesting.
This one I've seen.
Rockefeller. Now, you have to understand 9/11. He was involved in creating 9/11 as an emergency number, which is very strange because back then we had rotary dial phones. So it's illogical for someone that's in a panic to have to go find the 9, which is... I mean, you'd
Should've been
think
111.
it should have been 111. Exactly. But why was it not? Why all of a sudden the 9/11? And like they always do, his watch happens to be set to 9/11. And the ad on the facing page of the magazine has an image of two twin towers.
Can we do more of these next week?
Yes.
That
I
would be
think we
awesome.
probably have a lot more to go, and this
we
is
could, we
fun.
could do predictive programming part 2. for
Well,
next
and in
week.
fact, I was going to say, do you guys
Yes.
want to do giants or more predictive
Let's do this.
Let's
Let's
do
do
this.
this more next week because I'm
Okay.
having so much fun.
All right,
but
we're
we
about-
gotta wrap it up.
Before we wrap it up, I'm going to say something about the show that we end with. Look, yes, we talk about conspiracies here, and it's not lost on us that even everyone in this show is not on the same page spiritually. We all, I think, might agree that there is a spiritual world out there.
Oh yes, I do.
My vote for you, because I have a feeling that the implications of who we align ourselves with in this world have something to do with our eternity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there was a man, Jesus Christ, who came down to earth, half man, half God, that gave us a way to avoid the hell that is coming to earth and the hell that could be here afterward. Get to know who he is.
Be a good
Salvation is
soul.
free.
Be a good spirit. Be a lover of light, compassion, empathy, and we gotta cut
You
out.
can't go wrong with those things.
Exactly.
We
We
will
got to
see
cut
you guys
out.
next
We'll
week.
see you guys next week. We love you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Woo!
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. But yeah, Jesus even said he's the way, the truth, and the life.